mystery to me. How many other married men have you fooled around with? Are you going to abort this baby like you did the other two when you were in high school? Who told you I had those abortions? I only told my closest friends about that. Why should a tramp like you even care who told me? Like I said, I know everything I need to know about you. Whose husband are you gonna fuck next? Who I sleep with next is none of your business, Vera. Well, as long as it's not my husband, I don't really give a shit. Now, there are a few things you need to know. First, Kenneth will never divorce me to marry an ignorant, nose-ring-wearing, dollar-store-shopping tramp like you. His secretary, for God's sake. I delivered one of my most disgusted looks across the table at my husband's latest and most threatening girl toy. All of his other gold-digging bitches had taken all they could from him and promptly moved on. A few had been only one-night stands. Despite the fact that my husband had spent thousands of dollars on his whores, I had not let that bother me too much. At the end of the day, I was still the queen bee, and the only woman with the keys to the castle and access to his massive fortune. I was a lot of things, but I was no fool. There was way too much money at stake for me to make a fuss about my husband dipping his silver spoon into a bowl of grits. His trysts were what I called assembly line sex. I believed that most men were natural-born dogs. Therefore, when it came to sex, they would hump a fire hydrant. Besides, I hated having sex with Kenneth these days. It had become downright gruesome. Just the thought of him flopping up and down on top of me with his 3 layers of blubber and foul sweat turned my stomach. Apparently, his vile body didn't bother his other women, but then the right amount of money could make just about anything tolerable. I had never confronted Kenneth about his affairs, and I never complained about him leaving me home alone so much, because no matter which one of the fancy hotels he took his women to, he always came home to me. But I was really worried about Lois. For one thing, he'd been with her a lot longer than any of the others. At 19, she was the youngest and the prettiest, and the nail in the coffin was the fact that she was carrying his baby. For the first time, I was worried that I would lose the best meal ticket I ever had. I was not about to let it go without a fight. And when it came to doing battle, I didn't fight by the rules. I did whatever I had to do to win. You can call me what you want, but the thing is, I'm having Kenneth's baby. I'm sure he'll leave you and marry me when I tell him he's finally going to be a daddy. He told me that he's been wanting a child for years, and if I... Shut up! I had to cut the bitch off. So far, everything that had spewed out of her mouth made me feel nauseous. Don't you think I know that too, little girl? But I paused, leaned back in my chair, and patted the side of my head. Then I continued, with the smuggest look on my face that I could manage. At least the child I'm carrying will have his name. Lois couldn't have looked more dazed if I had thrown a glass of blood in her face. What? You're pregnant too? I didn't know that. Of course you didn't know that. But you know it now. I'm 2 months along. You and I will probably give birth around the same time. The way Lois's face looked now, I thought it was going to melt. I enjoyed watching her reaction during the few moments of silence that followed. She looked like she wanted to cry. You're 2 months along? Kenneth told me he hasn't touched you in 6 months, she mumbled. I froze and glared at Lois in outraged disbelief. The huge knot forming in my stomach felt like a cannonball. Kenneth and I had just made love a few hours ago. I couldn't believe that he would tell this slut such a bald-faced lie. Sister, that brother lied to you. Married men who cheat on their wives do a lot of that, you know.